balloons, bazookas, boobies, bosoms, boulders, cans, hooters, knockers, melons, honkers, jugs, rack, tatas, tits, torpedoes, guns, bust, doorknobs, coconuts, and our favorite one, the girls. Welcome to the All About Breastfeeding show, where your host, Lori, highlights mothers just like yourself and goes beyond the surface questions and digs deep so they share not only their joys and happiness in their daily breastfeeding life, but also their pain and struggles and how they worked through them.
Welcome to All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out. Episode number 60, Just Lori. 3 common myths about breastfeeding. As I record this show, I'm reflecting on some family events that are going on. Some have occurred just recently, and others are coming up very soon. I always like to get to know the hosts a little better of the shows I'm listening to, who they are, what their family's like, what their days are like, what they like to do and not do. I like to know what makes them tick and what pisses them off. In the process of chatting with my guests, I do share some info when it seems appropriate. However, none of the things that are going on right now will just fit nicely into a regular conversation. And I love nothing better than to share good news as it rolls in. So let's see. My mother-in-law, Renee Eisenstadt, she just celebrated her 90th birthday. Now, both my mother and father-in-law are both 90 years old. I know my husband thinks I'm wacky when I come out with certain things, but I was just sitting and thinking the other day and I said to him, you know, you have something most of us don't ever get to experience. He looked at me with one of those, oh no, what is she going to say now? I said to him, you know, you've been blessed to have both your parents reach the ripe old age of 90 years old. I just knew he was going to have a quick response and start saying something like, well, not really. So I was well prepared and I jumped on it by saying, well, myself and my siblings can't say that. None of my cousins can say that. Neither can my nieces and nephews. None of your best friends from high school or college can even say that. I then mentioned others that I grew up with that I know can't say that either. So, this is huge in my book. And he did have to agree. But then we both wondered, how many people can say that both their parents are still living at 90 years old or above? So I thought I'd like to ask my listeners. You can go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz and you'll see a little pink thingy on the right side that says voicemail. Just click on that and tell me if you can say that you have parents that have both lived till 90 or above, and I will happily share this on my next show. Okay, other wonderful things in my life. My oldest daughter, Alicia, just accepted a new position at the Thunderbird School of Global Management right here in Glendale, Arizona. She will be the program manager of executive education. This position was well earned, and we are so proud of you, Alicia Heather. In a few weeks, we will have the privilege of attending Jesse's graduation ceremony from Des Moines University. 8 years of schooling to become a doctor. And now, at least 3 more years of residency to go. We are very proud of you, Jessie Wade. My youngest, Carly, and her husband, Alan, yes, his name is Alan, you heard me right. Well, they are going to be the proud owners of their very first home in a few weeks, and we are all incredibly excited for them. Particularly so because this means we have another place to have parties at. And Alan and I now have a place we can sleep over when we hit the party scene in downtown Phoenix. If you're listening, just kidding, kids. Lastly, the 2 girls are both celebrating wedding anniversaries. 2 years for Carly and Alan and 4 years for Alicia and John. Congratulations, kids. Hey, what good is having your own show if you can't brag once in a while? On to today's show. So, 3 myths about breastfeeding. There is so much information about breastfeeding, and some of it is accurate and great and exactly what we want moms to know. Other information runs the gamut from poor to downright negligent. While there are frequently what I call nuggets of truth in what a lot of people share with breastfeeding moms, it still may not be right for the individual breastfeeding pair. Confused? Well, come along with me for the ride, and I hope to be able to explain myself, because poor information can be responsible for some mothers not continuing to breastfeed. Poor information can be responsible for moms not making enough milk. Poor information can be responsible for babies not gaining well. So here I am to the rescue, Lori Jill Eisenstadt, IBCLC, helping save mothers and babies in breastfeeding. I know that sounds dramatic. I do mean for it to be, because it's serious. I also thought it would be fun to add a little bit of humor to this hot topic, as well as to amuse my husband, who edits all my shows. I can just hear him groaning in the other room. What are some of the common things that mothers are told about breastfeeding that can screw up the breastfeeding relationship? Here goes. Number 1, only breastfeed from one side each feeding. This gets a big fat "what?" from me. While it may turn out that a mom is making enough milk for several other babies on the block, and her baby might only need one side to get full and gain well, until we know this for sure, this is very poor advice. When mothers are advised this in the very beginning of breastfeeding, this puts her in jeopardy of not building a full supply to meet her baby's needs. This puts her baby in jeopardy of not gaining well or losing too much weight. The question I have for people who give this advice is, how do you know how much milk this mom makes? How do you know how effective her baby is at removing the milk? The first 6 weeks of breastfeeding are incredibly important to building a good supply that meets your baby's needs. We want to give your body the best chance to do this. By limiting the baby to one side per feed, you may limit your ability to make enough milk for your baby. The general rule of thumb is to always offer both sides for each feeding. If your baby is feeding well and has received enough milk from one side, he will more than likely turn you down. My suggestion is for the first few weeks, always offer the second side and let your baby be the one to turn you down. Once you get past the initial common weight loss that happens over the first 4 days, and once you get to about the 2-week-old stage and your baby has gained back birth weight, you may have a better idea on how to go about this. If your baby's breastfeeding behavior, as far as frequency of feeds, milk transfer, output, is normal, and breastfeeding is normal for you, you have no pain with breastfeeding, and you get to your 2-week visit, and your baby is gaining well, you will be in a better position to evaluate the whole one breast per feeding thing. What exactly do I mean by this? If your baby has been breastfeeding from both sides and has gained a normal amount of weight, well, this tells us that he needed to have the volume from both sides in order to gain well. If this has been working well for you, keep doing the same thing. Please don't listen to anyone who tells you that your baby only needs one side. I have seen this happen in that babies go for a weight check, and then when asked about the feeding habits and mom talks about both sides feedings and lasting 45 minutes to an hour, they're then told that's way too long and your babies only need to get milk from one side, they can get enough. So to reduce the feeds to only one side. Can you see why this drives me crazy? Common sense tells us not to mess with something that has been working quite well. Perhaps we could educate the mom that newborns, a 45-minute to an hour feeding between both sides and burping or a diaper change in between is pretty much the norm. If you have been offering both sides, but your baby rarely takes both sides per feeding, and yet has been gaining well, then it is likely at this point that your baby will be fine with just one breast per feeding. Be careful, though, to always be checking in with your baby. Pay attention to their hunger cues. As your baby gets older and your milk supply naturally regulates, meaning may come down, your baby may want and need to nurse from both sides at each feeding. Some mothers, they just get used to feeding from one side per feeding, that they just get busy sometimes and they miss the signs that their baby wants the other side. On a regular basis, I meet moms whose babies were gaining well for the first couple of months and only nursing from one side. Everybody's happy. But then they notice that their baby is not sleeping as well night after night, not napping as well, or they just notice an increase in their fussiness after some feedings. They realize they're hard to settle down after some feedings. Maybe they notice less output. Perhaps their baby is acting fairly normally and nothing stands out. They go in for a weight check and find out that their babies have been gaining much less than they should be. They start doubting their supply, start taking herbs and pills, and drinking an excessive amount of water to increase their supply. Upon meeting with one mom this week, who I would say is like the poster child for this situation because I see it all the time, I determined that there is no major known cause for her baby losing weight, other than the one red flag is that she was offering only one side per feeding. If her baby was hungry after he came off the breast the first time, she kept putting him back on the same side until he seemed to fall asleep or appeared full. Using the scale that I bring to consults, I was able to show her that when she put the baby on the right breast the first time, he took 45 milliliters, which is about 1.5 ounces, which is easily a half a feeding for her baby. She put the baby back on the breast twice more, and she could see the second time putting the baby on the same breast, her baby got 8 milliliters. And then the third time, 2 milliliters before getting really frustrated and pushing off, which means that her baby has a total of 55 milliliters the whole feeding. That's not quite 2 ounces. Typically, this would signal the end of a feeding session because, as mom says, this is all she always takes. Well, I asked the mom if she's willing to experiment a bit, and everyone is, and I asked her to put the baby on her other side, and voila! In about 10-12 minutes or so, her baby transferred an additional 50 milliliters for a total of 105 milliliters this feeding, which basically meant she only gives one side, her baby was getting half of a feeding. So here, I could say the proof was in the pudding, or the scale. Mom now realized that her baby does need both sides. I spoke to this mom about 3 days later, and while she had not taken her baby in for a weight check yet, she noticed a significant difference in her baby's behavior already. She described wet diapers that she could really feel the weight of the diapers. And she also said that her baby, who had been increasingly fussy and crying, was now cooing again and totally fine to be put down on the floor for a short period of time and content to just watch the others in the household walk around, rather than cry as she had been doing the last few weeks. So, my advice to new mothers, when your baby's born, always offer both sides per feeding. A well-fed baby will let you know if he needs one side or both. And continue to test the waters from time to time, and be sure your baby is only wanting one side per feeding and you are not avoiding the other side because someone gave you poor advice. The second myth: only feed your baby for a specific time on each side. So now you have someone telling you, oh, put your baby on both sides, but limit your baby. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes on each side, because you're told that your baby should be able to get all they need in that specific period of time. Run, don't walk, away from that poor advice. In response to the advice, I asked the person giving the advice, oh, so how much milk is the baby supposed to take per feeding? And does that always stay the same? How much milk does this mom make? How effective is her baby at transferring the milk? How do you know how long it takes for her baby to take that volume? The mom doesn't know. The baby doesn't know. How do you know? The deal here is that babies are quicker and more efficient at some feedings than others. Babies want more at some feedings and less at others. Let's just think about adults and our own eating and drinking habits. And by the way, as independent adults, we can get up and get water or food if we're thirsty, and little babies can't. We drink water or coffee or tea or juice when we're thirsty. We have a snack when we're hungry. We eat our meals how much we want and when we want. No one is forcing you to eat a certain amount of food at a certain time. And no one is letting you only drink 4 ounces of water when you're still pretty parched and want 8 ounces. Believe me, you would be pretty darn miserable if you were not able to pay attention to your hunger and hydration cues. You would be frustrated and perhaps even angry. This would begin to affect your mood and your sleep habits. We eat more foods at some meals and less than others. We don't always finish our food in the same amount of time. If your baby is breastfeeding well in a good nursing rhythm, why on earth would you take away his meal just because the clock tells you that he's been there for 10 minutes? If your baby is on a roll, please let him finish. He will be a much happier baby. After all, he can't tell time. He just knows when he's hungry and when he's full. One of my many breastfeeding mantras is, watch the baby, not the clock. The third myth, a breastfed baby needs additional water from a bottle. Not that we are coming upon the summer weather, this is always a good one to talk about. The answer is absolutely not. Your breast milk has a very high water content, and your baby definitely does not need additional fluids. He may be thirsty, and so he needs to breastfeed to get hydration along with the other calories that he needs. This can actually be quite dangerous. For newborns, additional water can lead to a higher bilirubin level and excessive weight loss. Too much water can lead to a very dangerous medical condition called water intoxication. Adding water causes babies to fill up without adding calories and can result in severe weight loss. Babies who are supplemented with water, they will get empty calories, nurse less, and may not gain well. So do not even think about offering your baby additional water, at least until they're 6 months old or over, and even then in very small amounts. These are just 3 of the most common myths. There are a lot of myths about breastfeeding, so you can be sure I will be back again with the same topic but different myths. My quote for you this week is by Helen Keller. When one door of happiness closes, another opens. But often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one which has been opened for us. Until the next show, bye-bye. Before I end, I have 3 topics I would like to end this show with. The first item is, I love getting email and reviews from you, my listeners. The next best thing for me to do would be able to get to talk to some of my listeners and hear your feedback about the show. What are you liking? What do you want more of? Your thoughts on what I can do to make the show better, and any additional thoughts you have. If talking to me is something you would like to do, just go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/contact. Fill out the form and just put the word feedback in the comments section, and I will send you an email so we can work out a time to chat. The second item is an offer to pregnant moms. There's no reason for you to have unanswered worries or concerns about breastfeeding. Many have said that you would have liked to have the opportunity to talk to me before your baby was born. so you could go over certain things that may have been troubling you about breastfeeding. Questions about maybe your health, medication you're taking, maybe breast surgery you had, your nipple anatomy. Perhaps you have fears or anxiety about breastfeeding and you feel it would be helpful to talk it out before your baby's born. Some mothers just have a bunch of questions that could not be answered in your regular breastfeeding class because of time or privacy. Talking through things can help you clear the way emotionally for an excellent start with breastfeeding. If you would like to Skype me, all you need to do is go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/Skype to schedule your online prenatal consult. The third and last item is a reminder about my fabulous online breastfeeding mothers group for you to join. We are meeting for 8 Wednesdays starting May 11th. There is only room for 10 moms, so if you want to join, check out allaboutbreastfeeding.biz support for details about the group, what we're doing, and the dates, and how you can get involved. Until the next show, this is Lori saying goodbye.